Hey guys, so I wanted to create a video today about suffering. This video is called The Secret to Suffering because I'm going through a lot of suffering right now. I'm talking about it publicly because I think it's important. I think it's important because there's so much suffering happening on this planet right now. And I think we're all really going through it, and we're all going through waves, and I think it's really important to normalize the suffering that we're going through. And I really want to talk about the secret to suffering and how we can use it to our advantage today. So if you're somebody who is struggling, or struggle is could be just around the corner too, right? Like, we're always going to be struggling and suffering as human beings. So it's important to have tools in our toolbox to be able to navigate some of this stuff. So I wanted to share a secret that I've come up with. But first I want to talk a little bit about the suffering that I've been experiencing. So today is day 4 with barely any sleep. I've been getting about 2 to 3 hours sleep per night. My mind feels like it's on overdrive. I can't seem to settle my mind down. There's a lot of stuff happening. There's a lot of stuff clearing. I've been through this type of thing before. And my suffering actually doesn't really scare me. It's not so much the suffering that scares me. It's the shame and the judgment that I apply to the suffering that scares me. So I almost feel this intense, whatever it might be, thoughts or feelings that come up, and then I tend to be okay with them because I'm able to witness them and observe them. But then what happens is I start to attribute meaning to the suffering, and I start to judge it, and I start to shame myself for having it. And one of the areas that I tend to shame myself is that it's not okay to have this experience. I'm supposed to have it together. I'm a coach. I do this work. I should know. And one of the areas that I really struggle with owning some of my suffering is with my clients, because I don't want them to think, wow, like, I hired this guy and he's just as much of a mess as I am. And but what I'm learning is that this life is just, we're inundated with it. We're all human beings. Doesn't matter what role we play. I'm not perfect. I have messiness, and I'm learning how to lead with some of my messiness and show people what is going on. So anyway, so that's been what I've been experiencing. My appetite's been interrupted. My relationships are impacted. My coaching has been impacted. I'm not sleeping at night. And it's been about 2 months now of kind of in and out. But then in the last probably 10 days, it's just been I've been in a really dark place. And so what I want to share today is just some of my own experience with, like, when we learn how to suffer, we suffer much less. That's a Thich Nhat Hanh quote, and it's true, right? When we know how to suffer, we know how to move through suffering in a way that puts a lot less pressure on us. And when we shame and judge our suffering, it makes it a lot worse. So we need to learn how to start to work with it in a way that is has more acceptance. And I noticed that, last night, after 3 nights of barely getting any sleep, last night before bed, I was almost panicking before going to bed. I was scared of my bed because I've just been laying there suffering for 3 nights in a row. And so I tried a different strategy. I just accepted that, I might not sleep tonight, and I might be tired for my clients tomorrow, and I might not have it all together. And I just had to kind of accept that that's a possibility, and instead of fearing it the whole time. And I ended up sleeping for 4 hours, and then I ended up waking up and I wasn't able to fall back asleep again. So definitely feeling really lethargic right now and really kind of just out of it. But anyway, this is a new thing I'm practicing too, is that, I don't want to wait till I'm feeling perfect to film and to record my videos, because that's really not what it's about. I think it's more about just showing up authentically. That's what I'm about. My brand is about that, and I'm learning how to show up in all forms. And I think it's really helpful for people to see that it's not about perfection. It's about just showing up. So one of the things that is important to understand about suffering is we have the suffering, and then we have the ego. The ego is the mechanism of our personality that we adopt that protects us from suffering. And what's happening when we allow suffering and we invite it in is the ego is actually being unraveled. And this is why it's so painful, because the ego judges the experience and we make it worse than it is. So what happens is, it's like the suffering needs to occur in order for the ego to unravel, but the ego is what's creating the suffering. So it's like we're caught in this like trap. So the secret that I want to teach you guys today is the secret of gratitude and bringing gratitude into your suffering. Because gratitude, when we bring gratitude into suffering, we understand suffering from a completely different standpoint. Suffering is essential to our growth. Without suffering, we would not grow and evolve as human beings. That's the incubation, where we go in and we literally go inside of ourselves and we experience the emotional debris that's inside of our bodies from past experiences, and we allow it to release. And what happens is the ego tries to trick us and tell us that we're reliving the experience and that we're re-traumatizing ourselves and that we're not healing. But what happens when we bring gratitude into this experience is we're allowing the emotions to be there, first of all, and we realize that we're not reliving the experience, the past experience, we're releasing the past experience. We actually have to experience the old emotional debris that we've put down inside of our body because we didn't want to experience it in the past. And we need to allow it to be transmuted. And how we transmute things is we stimulate them by having these experiences. So I'll give you guys an example of what's been happening for me. So I've been working through an abandonment wound that I experienced when I was 8 years old, and it's bringing up a lot of stuff in my relationship, and it's making me fear being hurt and fear being left. And so what's happening is I'm laying in bed at night and I'm overthinking, and I'm creating scenarios in my mind that are so erroneous, they're just not even real, and I'm causing myself to get stirred up. And I'm creating a lot of central nervous system activation. I'm creating a lot of debris, and it's all circulating. And then I am having these releases. I'm crying, I'm journaling, I'm connecting to the emotions, okay? So when we start to look at it from gratitude, my overthinking is stimulating the dormant things inside me that are impacting me in subtle, very subtle ways from my subconscious in day-to-day life prior to the suffering. But then once we allow the suffering, we're actually bringing it from the subconscious into the conscious, where it can be worked with. And this is why it's so intense. So we actually need the anxiety, the insomnia, the fear, the shame, the overthinking, all of that. We need it all because it's stimulating the stuff so it can finally come to the surface and be released. And this is how we learn how to suffer. This is the secret to a successful suffering experience, because we can't avoid it, right? We can maybe put it off, which is what I've been doing in a lot of my relationships, putting it off, blaming, using my ego as a defense mechanism, all this stuff. And now I'm really like, no, I gotta own this shit. This is stuff that's keeping me down. It's keeping me hardened. It's keeping me from allowing love in. So I really, really am working with this stuff, and it's been really powerful to allow myself to have this experience, but it's also been very painful. And I do recognize that the pain for me is essential to my growth. So with that being said, the secret is to be thankful for all the emotions that are coming up for you. So what I did last night, this came up for me. I was laying there, I was struggling, I was thinking about all this stuff, I was beating myself up, blah, 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 blah. The wheel was spinning and I could not stop it. And I was told by Spirit to thank these emotions because they're actually helping me spiritually evolve into the version of me that I'm trying to become. And so I started to say, thank you, insomnia. Thank you, overthinking. Thank you, fear. Thank you, anxiety. Thank you, shame. Thank you, judgment. And I worked through them all. And what ended up happening was pretty profound. I ended up starting to experience layers kind of just not lifting, but just kind of softening. And then I hit this little moments of peace. And it was like, it was nice. And that doesn't mean that it's not going to amp up again, right? Because it did. It amped up probably 15 minutes later. But that's what we need to start doing, because I'm getting used to practicing this new skill of allowing the emotions to be there, and practicing gratitude for all the emotions as they arrive. So give that a try, and see what comes up for you. And I would be curious to know what's your suffering flavor, right? This is a vulnerable post for me, so I'd love to know from you guys what's something vulnerable that you're going through that is creating suffering for you, and how can you practice gratitude for that suffering? What is on the other side of this suffering that is going to allow you to step into this newer version of yourself? And for me, it would be, once you heal your abandonment wound, you can connect. You don't fear connection anymore because you're safe in yourself. You stop abandoning yourself, and you're there for other, but you're there for self. So I'm on the other side. For me, what I'm grateful for from all my suffering is that on the other side is going to be deeper connection, deeper intimacy, being in a relationship that doesn't have to feel like peaks and valleys constantly. So yeah, I'd love to hear what yours is. Please drop some comments below, and yeah, happy Friday. I'm going to really tend to myself this weekend and just do a lot of, self-love and self-care, and try and nap where I can, and just be grateful for all that's coming my way. The peace, the anxiety, the fear, it all gets a seat at the table, because it's all instrumental to my spiritual growth. So thank you for tuning in. Much love to you guys. Have an awesome weekend.